Digital Experience Roundtable, our AI series, AI Show and Tell series. And today we have a special guest, good friend, a blast from the past for me, Steve MacLaughlin, who's he and I worked together at Blackbaud many moons ago now. I've been gone from Blackbaud longer than I was there, and I was there for nine years. So, Steve, you've been gone for quite a while now too, I believe.
Couple of years. Yep.
So, but we're going to talk today about in the product development world, how are we leveraging all these amazing new tools and capabilities that we have without shipping slop? And there's a whole lot of layers to that we'll talk through because it's very easy to ship slop, whether you're working with your teammates internally, whether you're working with customers externally, or whether you're shipping a product. So we're going to dive into that. But real quickly, just so you know who this is coming from. So Balboa is we're pretty much the largest solution consulting firm in the Pendo ecosystem. So our specialty is product analytics, user experience. We know how to take a platform like Pendo and help maximize the value of it in your product development efforts and customer success and retention efforts as well. So appreciate y'all coming. We've worked with a number of really cool organizations. This isn't even up to date, but we've worked with over 230 customers now over the past 2 years. Just get the chance to work with sort of the best and brightest in the product development world, and we're really proud of that. So, more information, just let us know. We'll have a chat if you're interested in working with us or you have capacity needs around product analytics. But let's jump in. So, actually, Steve, before we get going, why don't I let you introduce yourself real quick, and then we'll jump in to some conversation.
Yeah. So good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on when you're coming from. I'm Steve MacLaughlin. I'm the SVP of product at Gobel. We're a healthcare philanthropy consulting and technology firm, but I've been there for a while. But 20 plus years in product and product management. So seen lots of everything from zero to ones to a thousands to beyond that. And then, especially in the past couple of years, a lot of focus on the practical use of AI and the use of AI from both a product development, product management standpoint, but also how we're using AI to help enable users as well. So excited to talk about some of this slop and non-slop and other things, Jim.
Yeah. Awesome. And Steve, yeah, like I said, Steve and I were part of an organization called Blackbaud many years ago, and a lot of lessons learned there. We might run across some of those today as we chat. So, but here's an interesting statistic. I'll put this out. I don't think we gave you a preview of this, Steve. So I'm excited to get your real time response to this. But there's a study that Atlassian did in their State of Teams report this year that said 89% of executives do believe that AI has increased the speed of the work that their teams are doing, but only 48% say that it's improved collaboration. So we see this all the time. We see it in our own company. We see it in our clients. It's very easy to get personally more efficient, or at least we think more efficient using our Claude or our Chat GPT or our Grok, whatever your tool of choice is.
Yeah.
But it's a lot harder to make a team more efficient with AI today. And I see many fewer teams doing that. So Steve, how does this metric land on you? What are your initial thoughts when you see this?
Yeah, it definitely resonates. I was just having this conversation just yesterday with someone, and it's a bit of this AI productivity paradox, right? I would think, me personally, I think probably most of us and people we work with would say AI has certainly helped us as individuals be more productive in the amount of things we're able to handle. We can put more things on our plate. But then the real question is, if I'm more productive as an individual, but is the team producing more, or more importantly, is the business or our customers actually benefiting from an outcome? And that's where there's more of the uncertainty. I think that Atlassian sort of, uncovered, and I've seen it some other studies as well that have been published where individual productivity appears to be being boosted, but the signs that we are actually moving the needle on the business or moving the needle for clients and customers is still a search, right? That's at least I think been my experience. And maybe that's just where we're at in the adoption curve and use of AI from that standpoint. Yeah.
So how do talk to us about your team a little bit? Because you have a team presumably of product managers, and you probably work very closely with your engineering team, and there's different artifacts that need to flow back and forth across the people that are shipping product in your organization. But what does that look like? How do they use, what tools are they using internally? And then have you started to institute anything to help them collaborate together, with those tools and not ship slop to each other?
Yeah, yeah, that does happen. Yeah, so obviously, I'm used to living in the matrix where we've got product design, tech, data science, infrastructure, DevOps, but then you also have sales and marketing in that mix. You have finance in that mix, and I think all of us at Gobel are all of us are using AI on a day-to-day basis to help with both the product development, discovery, design, development cycle, but also on the sales and marketing side, on the finance side. And then there's a lot of use that we're doing using AI tools as a part of product discovery. So as we're gathering customer feedback, user feedback, AI is our companion sidekick riding right beside us on everything that we're doing today. And I think definitely I've seen some performance gains there too. We're using, I think one of the big things that we've seen in particular in the past year, 18 months is the use of more AI in discovery for prototypes, concept development, iterating on prototypes. Lots of lessons learned there as well. But yeah, I can't think of a day that goes by where we are not using AI in a meaningful way across everything in the product discovery, design, development life cycle. And the other exciting thing that we've seen is how other parts of the business are using it as well. To whether we're, doing planning for 2027 or we're going through feedback to identify key points that we can use for sales and marketing purposes. I would say it's a pretty integral part of what we do on a day-to-day basis for sure.
So, oh, I just stopped sharing somehow. Sorry about that. Um, I wanted to pop down to this question here, because you sort of just touched on it, and I was listening to a podcast with the president of Stripe, and if
Yeah,
I'm sure people know what Stripe is, but if you don't, it's a big, very tech forward payments company, and most of the new AI companies use Stripe to accept payments online, but also tens of thousands of other companies and mom and pop shops, e-com, everything. But they are shipping just at a velocity that's out of control. And he was talking about the fact that the bottleneck in their organization used to be engineering, right? How long will it take to get a new capability up and running? But
yeah,
now it's everybody else around it. And so we often think about enablement for our own organizations. Like you just mentioned, Steve, you've got product marketing, you've got sales and marketing, you've got customer success, and all of the internal constituencies inside of Gobel, but not even to mention the customer, who, by the way, has another day job that probably isn't your product.
yeah.
So, how have you all dealt with the increasing speed of what you've shipped in the product, just enabling the rest of the team on all these capabilities?
Yeah, you sort of nailed it, right? Most of my professional career, the limiting factor was always on the engineering side. Used to always say we can do anything, we can't do everything. So we need to be really careful about the things we choose to go and develop because it's going to cost engineering resources, and engineering resources are not finite or are finite. They're not infinite. And that's been true everywhere I've ever worked or every company I've ever partnered with. I remember years ago being in a meeting with some folks from Meta, who were still at the time called Facebook, and they were talking about a big project, and they at the time had, I don't know, 20,000 engineers or something crazy like that. And even they had to say, yeah, I'm not sure we can take that on. We really don't have the capacity right now. So everyone lives with this. This has been changed by AI, but not to the degree that everyone might think. Um, we now have a lot more capacity to build, but you still have to make sure you're building the right things, right? AI accelerates everything and AI amplifies everything, but it also accelerates bad stuff and amplifies bad stuff just as much as good stuff. And so what we have definitely found is, from an engineering capacity and what we can do, it is amazing how quickly we can produce stuff. But I would argue with evidence, right? Got the receipts for this. That is because we do discovery and design, and we're working collaboratively with the engineering team because we are building things that we've already validated upstream are the right things to build that drive value as opposed to let's just build all the things and then figure it out later. So that's I've seen that firsthand really in the past year become the reality. We're no longer constrained as much as we were historically on engineering capacity, but that still means you got to do discovery, you have to do design, you have to be very clear about what you're doing. You've got to measure not just the outputs, but the outcomes of what's happening. Like we built and shipped that. Is anyone using it? You still have to do all those things. So AI is not a shortcut or a substitute. I think sometimes new tech comes along and suddenly people think, well, we can throw out all the tried and true principles that we know that work and let's take a shortcut. And shortcuts are usually things disguised as less work, but they rarely are. You still got to do the work. If anything, it's meant we have to be further out ahead of the work that we're doing than in the past. So I come from the sort of Marty Kagan, Jeff Patton world of dual track. And so you've got continuous discovery. And what we found is we need to be multiple sprints ahead of the dev team on the discovery track to feed it back into engineering because they can rock on stuff really quickly, which is great to see. But you've got to be ahead on the discovery and the validation side. Otherwise, you will pay for it down the road when you're not getting the outcomes from it that maybe what you were initially planning. Yeah.
Back in the day, so Steve and I both had the opportunity to get indoctrinated by the Silicon Valley product group by Marty Kagan himself at one point, if I recall
Yeah.
correctly.
Marty came in with a couple of times and spent some time with us. Yeah.
That's right. And the we used to call it back then feeding the beast, right? For
Yes.
product management to stay ahead of the engineering team in terms of, having things lined up and ready to go for them. Do you think that's worse now, Steve?
It can be if it's uncontrolled. I think the other part of that too is again, I come from the mindset of you have a triad, usually product manager, product designer, lead engineer. And again, I think maybe this is a benefit of AI. Used to always be it was hard sometimes to get that lead engineer brought into the process because they're like, I'm supposed to be working on stuff, or my boss has told me I'm supposed to be working on stuff, not talking to customers. And you would get excuses for why you couldn't bring that lead engineer into the upfront triad work. I think there's a bit of an AI dividend we get now, which is I can lean more into that of, yeah, we want more upfront involvement from engineering and discovery. And it's okay because we know we'll identify issues and problems that engineering needs to solve more upfront. And because we've given ourselves a superpower on the development side, that definitely helps us. So I feel that that's a benefit that used to be an excuse or a reason why not everyone wanted to, would push back on participating in discovery when you really do need the design perspective, the product perspective, the engineering perspective, because they look at it from different lenses when you're trying to solve the classic, is it usable, feasible, viable, um, valuable, equation. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, for further notes on that, go read the book Inspired by Marty Kagan. I think it still
Yep.
applies.
Start with Inspired and you can move on to his other books. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's got a bunch now. But I'm going off script here a little bit because that's what we do. Steve and I are good at that. But I think one of the things you hear a lot about these days is like the blurring of lines. I hear more about engineers doing some of the design work themselves. I hear more about designers shipping the first version of code themselves because we all now have that capability. But what have you seen in your organization around like the collapsing of the roles between the three that you just mentioned, design, PM, and engineering? Or is it just a blurring of lines between the roles? How is that playing out in your world?
I think the lines have always been blurry, but that's okay. I'm used to operating in a world, or at least, or bringing in and putting in a playbook where we operate in a particular way, which is I want that cross-functional Venn diagram overlap of all these different groups, right? There's probably a day that doesn't go by where I don't have engagement from design, engineering, sometimes of the data science side, where we're all just trying to think through a problem. And so I don't get hung up as much on who's doing what and where as, you know, what's the problem we're trying to solve? How much of discovery have we done? How have we validated things, right? You know, you can have tech debt. I think you can have validation debt too. You build a bunch of stuff that's not validated. You just created a lot of validation debt for yourself, just like you can do a lot of tech debt, right? So I think it's okay for those lines to be blurred as long as there's a definite sort of playbook or a mindset of this is what we're trying to accomplish. I don't get as hung up on the who, right? I have design people who are very much engaged in using the AI tools as well as the engineering folks. As long as we're collaborative and we're aligning on here's what we're trying to work on, here's the problems we're trying to solve. Um, I'm okay with that being that. I could see how that could be a challenge if it scales over time, but I think that's good. That means people are engaged and care about the work that we're doing, and that's where you get the best results.
Yeah, even before AI, I would say that was the whole point of that triad is to sort of get them all thinking in the same, bringing your specialty area. If you're an engineer, of course, you need to bring your engineering chops to the party, but actually getting you thinking about the business problem was just as valuable, so you fully
Yeah, and
understood it.
absolutely. And if you're an engineer, right, you know, you will know of ways to solve problems that other people in the group don't because you've got that insight and expertise. And design is going to be really focused on is it usable and how do we, you know, bring that together from a sort of continuity of design and what's the overall user experience of things. So yeah, I find that being very, very helpful. You know, I've never sort of believed that the triad's three people. It's really three big areas you're trying to cover. And sometimes that also means like, okay, we've got something here. Let's bring data science into this discussion because we're dealing with a metric that we want to use in the product. We want to make sure that end users who are not data scientists and don't know what a regression is or what endogeneity is can
I
actually
don't know what
make
that
you.
is.
Yeah, it's okay. We'll talk later. But you could, but end users can figure out what this means, but like lean into the data science person. Like, okay, we're trying to do this in your magic data science world. How could we do this? And then engineering, how would that get calculated? Do we need to index this? How often would it get updated? Design, how do we present it in a way that the end user um, will actually use it? The big thing I would say we've been seeing as a recurring theme, how do you get the end users to trust it? Right. So I'll shift gears briefly here, but we do a lot of stuff where we're putting AI in the application. And AI, you know, I don't know, can't remember who said this, but AI is anything that hasn't been invented yet. So I'm talking like predictive models, right? That's a thing, which is machine learning, which is a kind of AI. Um, Generative AI, where we're generating some content in the application, and agentic AI, where we're doing task management. So, like, I'll get very specific about types, but the big thing that we are just really focused on is how do we get the user to trust it? How do we get them to trust that predictive model, which is a recommendation? And how do we show how it was developed and a feedback loop around it? If we use generative AI for certain places of content in the application, how do we build trust? How do we build a feedback loop? Sometimes the robot gets it right, sometimes the robot gets it wrong, just like humans. So that's been another interesting piece with the use of AI is on the app side when it's end users, we have to be very, very thoughtful, design, product management, engineering, data science about, what was the old Tron thing, fight for the user? Now it's like, we still got to fight for the user, but we got to get the user to trust what we're doing. And if you don't, they're not going to use it, or they're not going to use it to the extent you want them to. And then, if you can't get people to use stuff, it's all bad from there, right?
Yeah, that's right. And actually, I'll pull Chip's question out here because I think it's really relevant to what you just said. But does UI and design become less of a concern in the world of AI? Thinking of like the Salesforce headless approach.
No. No,
Like,
no, nope,
yeah,
nope.
okay. So
Sorry.
talk about that. Talk
Nope.
about that a little bit more.
No. If anything, discovery, design, UX, UI is even more important because guess what? One person with Claude code can in theory build just about anything. So the bottleneck is no longer the bottleneck. The ability to engineer a technical solution is no longer the limiting factor. It's going to be, is it valuable? Is it usable? Is it viable? Does it work? Can users use it? So I think design discovery becomes even more important. Um, in the past 6 months, we've definitely pivoted away from doing a lot of stuff that, again, I get in the weeds here, used to primarily be a lot of stuff in Figma, a lot of iterative stuff in Figma. We would use Figma Make, which is like Figma's version of doing some AI stuff. And we've used it in some very specific use cases where we needed a little help. We needed to get started. We needed to look at a variety of ideas. A lot of that stuff now we've shifted to Claude Code, which is Claude Code, or sorry, Claude Design, which is basically Claude's version of Figma. Lots of interesting learning lessons there, and that it's not quite Figma, but it does do some interesting things. So we will do a lot. We have shifted a lot of prototyping work to Claude Design. Um, but it's all still, you've got to have the context, the discovery, like you can't substitute the UI expertise stuff. That's, you'll just end up with slop if you do that. Like if I were to take two people, one of them who has a lot of expertise in UX and UI design and also has done the discovery, and the other person who's none of it, and I both gave them Claude Design, I would tell very quickly who was the expert user, very quickly. The expertise gets amplified, and the person without the expertise or the background gets amplified as well, but in the opposite direction. So, yeah, those still principles are even more important today. And you still got to do it, right? Um, no matter what is sort of
Yeah, I
my
mean,
view.
we I think we moved away at one point from calling user experience designers UX, and really it became more of an interaction design kind of concept, which was like, hey, there's a system over here, there's some technology, and people are going to interact with it somehow. That doesn't automatically mean it's got to be a user interface that's got buttons and fields
Oh
and
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I don't really care as much anymore. Maybe I'm just getting old about the labels we put on people and stuff. But yeah, it's more of that. Who's covering that domain area? Who's covering that usability factor, viability? That piece is still important. And different people will have different, a smaller team, maybe somebody has to take that on, that's not their primary expertise skill set, but um, you still have to do the work. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. All right, so pause here real quickly. If you'd like to interject a comment or ask a question, just use the little raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Feel free. I'll just call on you to keep it orderly, and we'll keep rolling here. Steve, you talked a lot about validation along the way. Like, give me some practical tips on like how do you go validate something that you're designing with your target buyers of that product or target users of that product before you ship it.
Oh, wow. I mean,
I
so
mean, that could
follow,
be a
yeah, it
whole
could be a whole
session, right?
show.
But
So, I mean, essentially, we follow the whole, product discovery track. So things start out as ideas, as concepts, as things that we're thinking about. And so everything you do is to try to reduce risk, reduce uncertainty, and just get a better understanding of things. So if we have an idea or a concept, we have a whole pool of users and customers and non-customers we go to say, hey, we're doing it. We want to do a discovery call. It's 30 minutes. And if it's something real brand new from scratch, it's usually we want to talk about concepts. We want to talk about what they do today and how they is this a problem for them today? How do they attempt to solve it today? Those kinds of things. Usually next round is there's a high fidelity prototype where we're working on something. We haven't built it yet, but we're getting closer and we want reaction to that. Like, does this solve that problem? Do you have feedback based on it? Sometimes we might also do clickable prototypes where we're asking them to actually interact with something that we've built that may not be engineered behind the scenes to get, another level of feedback and iteration. Um, and once we feel like we've done enough or enough for now, that's where the dual track comes in, right? We move that stuff to the backlog and we say, okay, this is an idea or a concept that started out, it's been iterated on. We feel good about this. We feel like we've done as much validation as we can you can do that this is the thing we want to go build. And then even after you've built and shipped it, then you're still looking at your product instrumentation to find out the what's the gap between all the discovery work you did in reality, which is people told us this or we thought this, but do they actually use it? And that's, where the instrumentation piece comes into play. Interesting things happening with instrumentation and AI too, by the way. But you can then look at that. Say, okay, we did the discovery, we designed it, we validated it as much as we can, we built it, we shipped it, and now what are people actually doing with it? And then what's the feedback we're getting? So it's just a whole. It's like that build, measure, learn loop, except there's like 10,000 things you're doing. And I think one thing we've been trying to do is how many of those things could we get AI to help us with along the way because we want to move fast. We don't have infinite resources, and we've definitely found magic tricks to do that. Like, we use a lot of Claude. There's other tools that do this too, but I've got every discovery call and every transcript and everything that we've done on the discovery side for over a year. That's all in Claude, and we can interrogate that and get things out of it. Right now, we're doing a lot of hooking up MCP on the instrumentation side to Claude because used to be if I wanted to know what people were doing, I need to make that someone's job or I need to go hire someone. So now it would be no, I tell Claude, here's this MCP connection, here's the questions, here's what I want you to go look at, and oh by the way, here are things I need you to keep an eye on and stuff like that. And I just get that right before I'd have to go give it, there'd be a lot more work versus now I can move a lot faster because I know what it is I want to do. I would say you still have to know what the heck you're doing. It just helps it for the world we're living in. Yeah.
Well, I think the AI capabilities, these tools that we have now, make people who know what they're doing. You said this earlier too, so I'm sort of repeating what you said, but they make people who know what they're doing like 10 times more powerful because you can go do that work yourself. You can ask the question in the way you want it to be asked, and then you can send an agent off to do that work for you on your behalf, straight out of your brain, right? On a recurring basis. So we sort of think of that as product analyst agents, and we're starting to really delve into building those with our clients for their ongoing work because the reality is there aren't enough people in most of these organizations doing that kind of work. One of the earliest, I shouldn't say earliest, but one of the fond memories that I have of working with you at Blackbaud was watching you launch a product. And when nobody else at the company was doing this, you launched the product and then the work almost began from there because you had all these dashboards hooked up. You could see telemetry, you could see what was happening in the product, and nobody had ever had that before at our company. And so you were doing something totally unique, and it sort of made people scratch their head like, why does he want to see all this data? Like the product's launched, it's already
Yeah.
shipped, right? Aren't we done?
Shipping it is just the beginning, right? Like
Yeah,
there's get to market and then there's go to market. And so, yeah,
I like that.
we're not here to do agile. We're not here to do Scrum. We're not even here to do AI. We're here to drive outcomes for clients in a way that works for the business. And so it's not enough just to build the thing. It's like, I got to get people to use it. I got to get them to get value from it. I got to drive an outcome from it. And I guess I'm just wired that way of like, don't you want to know? Don't you want to know if it worked? Like,
Right.
like building
Yeah.
it. And now because the building part has gotten a lot easier, and you can do a lot more things at scale. You still got to do all this other stuff, but thankfully the tooling is coming along. It's not all there yet. I think back to what we were talking earlier about Atlassian and the collaborative piece. A lot of the tools you can tell where they're going, but they're just not there yet. A lot of the tools are definitely built for a single user. And I have found, and this is true of a couple of the tools out there, the collaborative parts, like it's like, yeah, it's not there yet. I'd love to see your roadmap. You got to be thinking about this one. Like at some point, this model of a project or something in here. I know you're gonna like I think like a product manager, like I'm sure somebody there is like, yep, we're working on that. We need to make it more collaborative, sharing. Like, and when they unlock that one, like it's going to be even more powerful. But that's a challenge today. A lot of the tools are not as helpful on the collaboration, but that's where I'd say like then get out of the AI and go meet with your people or get on a phone call
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
like this is the look, AI is not going to do all the work for you, so you might have to actually do some of it yourself, um but you still got to do that collaboration stuff too. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Darn, I lost my train of thought. I had another question for you, but I guess, as you think about, what you just said there, outcomes, like how do you think about outcomes versus all the inputs and actions that you're trying to get people to take in the product? Because those still, even the product actions aren't the outcomes themselves that you're looking for, both on the customer side and on your business side, because you're trying to run a business and software just happens to be the product you sell. So
Yeah.
talk to us about like your like how do you map between like the lowest level information that you get from the product all the way up to the
Yeah.
business outcomes on both ends?
Yeah, and this is hard. This is hard whether you have AI or not. So like there's nothing AI specific to this, but you know, if you are just producing outputs, right? We ship some stuff, we ship some bits, we did a thing. So what, who cares? Like, and then what? So for me, from a product leadership perspective, and this is not easy, and different companies have different cultures that struggle with this, but you got to get really clear on what is the outcome that we're trying to drive and work your way backwards. And I think, there's a lot of stuff now with AI. I think I wrote something about this maybe a week or two ago that like you're seeing a lot of studies come out now where people say, yes, we're using AI, but we can't point to any significant outcome. And my guess is that that's not an AI problem, that that's a culture problem. And that would be true of about any piece of tech. I think of it as like it's the treadmill problem, right? A treadmill is great at a lot of things unless you actually want to get somewhere. And a lot of these AI pilots and projects are just walking on treadmills. They will increase your heart rate. You can burn some calories. Good for that. But like if you thought you were going to get to the destination on the treadmill, you're not. That's not what it's designed for. And the only way you can get there is if you're very clear about the outcome. And the outcome has to be like, what's the measurable piece of value? For a lot of the clients we work with, I mean, sort of not to oversimplify it, but I will. It's uh, do we get revenue? Do we keep revenue? Do we grow revenue? Do we reduce cost? That's the outcome we're trying to get. And so if you can't tell me how what the heck we're doing or building helps drive one of those four things, I'm not saying no. I'm just saying not now. Put it on the shelf until you show me, does it drive one of these outcomes? And like in a measurable way, like how would we know building and shipping this capability would get more revenue or keep revenue or grow revenue or reduce cost, or maybe you could say it grows uh, net. But that's where you got to get really clear on. And that's hard sometimes for people who may be operators of a business, but not leaders of a business and don't actually know. I don't know what the outcome is. I just crank the machine here. I don't actually know what it would be. That's one of product's responsibilities is be aligned on that outcome, right? We got to be able to drive some measurable benefit. And if we can't, one, we got to find it, or two, there's lots of competitors out there who will do it and they'll eat our lunch. So you got to really zero in on that. Otherwise, you're just like an output factory. We just make sparks. We're a spark factory that makes sparks all day. Like
Right.
I don't
Right.
know
A cheaper
who
feature factory.
feature factory.
Right.
Yeah, who's buying
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Exactly. All right, Carrie, let's mix it up a little bit if you want to
Yeah.
go for it.
Um, Thank you, Steve, for attending. And Jay, thank you for asking that question because I had two questions. You know me and my outcomes. So you asked my second one, so I'll ask the first one. There's starting to be a trend, and I've been talking to some companies that are starting to move more to like consumption-based pricing. Maybe
Hmm.
maybe they're talking about outcome-based pricing, but I think we're a little bit ways off that to the point is that's hard to measure. With to me, with consumption-based pricing, you got to be really good with your telemetrics, right? And being able, and then it becomes, it's like you're always like, retention is always on, right? So
Yes.
have you been thinking about since you, I kind of wonder where you've been in my past because having someone in product that thinks about the data like you do is amazing. But are you thinking now about like when if you move to that model away from subscription into like consumption, do you think differently on the metrics that you're going to be building into the product or thinking about in the product, or is it just surfacing up signals in a different way, maybe as part of like the product led growth type of mentality?
Yeah, it's a good question. How many different ways have we had that we charge for stuff, and that seems to be always evolving, right? Used to be user seat licenses, and then it was record based. Like, there's a million ways to price this stuff. I think the the world we're quickly accelerating to is how is that pricing aligned to value
Mm-hmm.
for the customer, and but you still got to pick something you're going to price it based on, right? I mean, to me, it's not, you're going to pick. So if we're going to use consumption or if we're going to use value or outcome based, great. You're going to anchor around that. Then you got to work your way all the way back to how do we track and measure that so we can monetize it? But then at the same time, how do we show value? I'd say the bigger leap for a lot of tech companies is for so many software companies, we're just a cost. We're a thing you pay money for, and you hope you get some ROI out of it, but it's not always clear. I think products that can pivot more to we're on the value creation side. So don't think of me as just a cost and you just pay this invoice and sign a multi-year contract, but think of it more of you pay something for sure, but here's the value I'm delivering. And the more in the application and in the work that you do that you can surface
Mm-hmm.
that value, like those will be the companies that win. We're certainly doing some interesting stuff along those lines because I think that's a better story to tell, especially if I link arms with customer success and I know I'm going into the next customer success meeting and we're able to say, in the past 90 days, here's the value that we have been that the solution you're doing has been able to generate for you as a customer. That is very, very powerful, and that changes the conversation, right? Because a lot of times people don't want to have those meetings unless suddenly it's, wow, this is what you've been able to do for us, or in some cases, what has the tech allowed your organization to do, and we can measure it and we can show it. That's a really powerful force for sure. And I think the economics of like how you do pricing and that works. But I think it's still true. Like there's only two ways to make money: you bundle or unbundle. So pick
Well,
pick which
yeah.
one, and then how do you go from there?
And I feel like we've invested so much in people that are there to show the customers the value during a business review or whatever, right? And to your point, if they can see it easily in the product, right? And then you can easily tie whatever however you decide to do your pricing, that's just so much easier than having to like, you know, work through all of this, the kind of the people. And not saying that you still want to have those relationships, but I think the the surfacing that up is sometimes the hardest part. I feel like the data is there, but it's how do you actually get it into the product in a way that the customer is like, oh yeah, I see it, So
This is sort of the trick I use for lots of things, which is it's a very simple question. What if it was all about X? And I use this with clients and internally as well. So in this case, what if it was all about showing the value to the customer? What would we do? Now you're going to get a lot of ideas, and half of them, more than half of them, are not going to be good, and you won't be able to actually do it. But you get a few nuggets out of framing that up. Like, what if it was all about showing the customer the value they're getting from it? You'd surface some stuff, and then you decide, okay, how do we put that in the app? How do we get to, it may be something you want to put in front of choosers, not users. So the person who signs the contract probably has a very different perspective than the day-to-day user, but that's a way to get at it. And it's hard, but the data's there. The data's either there or it's not. Like if you can't actually prove that it's making a measurable difference, then like we have a different problem. But I just can't imagine not trying to think about it that way.
Think about one of the most prolific consumption-based products we all use today is an AI agent in tokens, right? What is the value of a token? Somebody has to draw that connection, and that's different for everybody's company. And I think a lot of the products that we all sell and deliver and stand behind have different value props for different organizations that we serve, different companies that we serve. And so that's where the tailoring, Carrie, to your point, somebody's got to translate how much of it can be done in the product versus, and you have to be very aware of that when you're designing your product, right? Because what your product measures might not be the value metric that the customer is the reason they're buying the product, the reason they can justify the spend on your
Yeah.
product.
Yeah. It's all tokens, but tokens is just like any other economic device humans have used for the past 300,000 years.
Yeah.
We're just using it. But and what you're seeing now is what happens in every business cycle, which is there are Louis Vuitton tokens and there are Kmart tokens. And this is why there are whole companies who built ecosystems around, depending on the job you're trying to accomplish, are you going to use the most expensive token or the least expensive token? Like, yeah, I mean, this happens in every industry. It's just happened faster to AI. So you get token inflation, token deflation, token maxing, all that stuff. It's sort of like the old AOL days where they would mail you the CD that had 100 free minutes, right? And now I get 100 free tokens to use on this new model. And as soon as I burn through them, someone's going to charge me. Like I don't know. There's nothing new here if you pick up on the patterns.
Justin, why don't you come off mute, buddy? Good to see you.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Uh, Got a question really about kind of the classic decisioning on buy, build, and partner. And I think for software folks, like I know some folks on the phone, you guys, this is like secondhand nature, and a lot of it comes out of discovery. Um, in some conversation I've had, in fact, in the last hour this morning, talking to folks like outside of traditional software companies that are thinking about how to use AI tools. And I think I'm observing, but I would love your thoughts and see if you're seeing this as well, like this bias toward let's just build, build, build everything. And it feels like some companies think that AI is going to solve every single challenge, and I'm seeing in one company in particular I'm working closely with, like it's a startup. They're really struggling to get to market. They've got a product that essentially like has value today, but they're kind of waiting to launch it until they can build like a gargantuan like level platform and solve like so many different things that, and they're burning through capital quickly, and the sales folks are very frustrated. They want to essentially launch this thing publicly, but they're thinking, okay, we can just build more and more and more. We're building faster, but also like the scope can be bigger. Versus like, how do we truly like partner in ecosystems and not just build, build, build and have that bias? But would love to see what you guys are seeing.
Jay,
Steve,
you
I
want
think
to
you,
take that one first,
no,
or you want me to take
I
that?
think you should take that one. And I was actually just trying to, we have a question that's almost like tailor made for that. But but how do you like remove, because what you're basically saying, Justin, is that the old bottleneck of engineering is gone, right? We could build everything. How do you choose the right things to build now? Right. I mean,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
And
and
it's that
it's really
classic like build by
the
partner,
scope.
right? Yeah. I would add in
yeah,
there like
yeah,
rent. Rent is an option as well. Like,
that's
is there
right.
something we could rent in the short term rather than build? Like, it's a hedge. Like, there are lots of things out there um, in the ecosystem that I would never try to build again. So like I would never try to build my own SMS messaging platform. There's a whole bunch of really good ones out there that have really good integration. And if I decide SMS is a channel I need to use, there's 3 or 4 companies I know I could plug into. I would not try and go build that thing myself. There's a lot of things around like payment processing and things like that. I would never try to, having built that stuff before, I would never try and go do that. There's 2 or 3 things out there that I would go in and immediately partner or rent because I don't need to build that stuff, right? So um I think though the part of the dilemma, well, we could keep building and building and building and building, but like at some point you got to ship something and get it in front of real users and real customers and get that validation feedback. Otherwise, you're just like there's a cost of delay and you're generating a lot of potential risk. And look, been through this before. Like if the first iteration of something you've built you're not a little bit embarrassed by, then you're not trying hard enough. Like, there's stuff that we've done and I've done in other places too, where the V1 of it or the V.5 of it, like, yep, I know it's missing a whole bunch of stuff, but that's okay because I know it's missing stuff, but I need to validate what I've got here, right? And the thing I always found was if users and customers are telling you, um, I like what you've got, I want more, that's good. What's bad, and Jay and I have lived in this world, is when they say, don't talk to me about future stuff you're building because the current thing doesn't do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. That's bad. That's how you've got yourself in a bad spot. So, you know, er, ship early and ship often, be validating, be learning. You can keep building stuff, but it also then leaves your options out. If the world changes tomorrow, in case it does, then you can pivot and you're not locked into, you've got to build this whole enterprise global ecosystem in order to get it to market. No, you don't, right? You could do it over time if you want to.
It's such a trite example, but I'll go back to it anyway. 2007, the iPhone ships didn't have copy paste, right? Everybody complained
Yeah.
about the iPhone not
Oh,
having
I can't
copy
believe it. How
paste.
do you not have copy paste?
Right. Well, because we just shipped you the iPhone. That's why. But it actually jogged my memory, Justin. Your question that I had, or the thought that I had earlier. Everything, and Steve, you brought this up in our prep call. Everything is in perpetual beta these days, right? Everything's in beta. It used to be very much waterfall, right? Like discover, design, build, ship, repeat. And
Repeat.
now
Yeah.
it's almost the opposite, right? Where the first thing you do is ship because nothing survives first contact with the market or the enemy, right? And then you really begin to learn. But in many companies that I've been a part of and worked with, especially I think B2B, vertical B2B seems to be have a very Carrie, you might agree with me on this. Almost worse than this than anybody is you just get into that shipping mindset, feature factory, and you ship it and you're done and you're on to the next thing that the sales team or the marketing team is asking for, as opposed to that being the starting point. So and then things just never get revisited, they never get finished. I've been in many companies like that, and when I was in product management, shame on me, I probably shipped stuff that way myself at times. So, how do we prevent that? Because that's a cultural change, right, Steve? Like, how do you, if that's not the way your organization works, that's a big hill to climb.
It's a lot of culture. I mean, so much this, I mean, it's probably overused. A lot of this is, culture eats strategy for breakfast and
Yeah.
AI eats your lunch later on. But and it's true, but part of it is it's just I feel like this is mindset and skill set, right? Are we iterating? Are we moving quickly? There would be times when we're working on something and we've done a bunch of validation, we're ready to go. And it's like, well, we could probably you could work on things forever if you wanted, but it's like, well, are we ready to ship it? And sometimes you just get to a point where something like, look, we're not going to learn anything dramatically new if we keep working on this for another sprint. Let's get it out there and get some feedback. I often, when working with the team, it's like, let's build simple first. We can always build advanced later. But if we don't get simple to work, we're never going to get to advanced. So like, let's start with simple. And that allows us sometimes to draw a line of like, this is the simple version. Let's get it out there. Let's get some feedback. We sometimes are our worst critics because we have the curse of knowledge. We know too much. And we're like, well, but what about this? Death by what about? Like, what about this? What about that? What if someone wants that?
Edge cases.
I don't, yeah, it's like death by all the edges, right? So sometimes I just say, I don't know. I know what, but I do know how we can find out the answer, which is we can ship it and we can drive it to users and we can get feedback. And guess what? They will tell us or not. And then go from there. So yeah.
That's the beauty of shipping bits versus atoms, right? You can actually make a change after you ship it. If you're shipping a physical product, you can't do that. But many of us are not doing that.
It's harder. So. Yeah. And yeah, that's why the faster you move, the more flexibility you actually have, which sounds like it would be the opposite. But no, the faster you move, the more agility, the more flexibility you have. Because we could say, you know what, next week we could turn on the product flag in production and just make that thing disappear. And because we got some feedback that like it's not, we can do that. We can totally do that. So we have a safety net. Let's go. Let's move, right?
Absolutely. All right, we're running out of time here. So Steve, actually, if anybody would like to ask any more questions or make any more comments, now's your shot. So go ahead and raise your hand. But just to sort of put a fine point on things, Steve, like where can folks connect with you if they'd like to reach out and ask you more questions?
Probably LinkedIn's easiest place. Steve MacLaughlin, MacLaughlin.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn's the only answer to that question now. I mean, it's sort of silly, but all right. And David's got a question.
I'll have my AI assistant get back to you, and then we'll set up a call.
My agent will call your agent.
Yeah.
David. Yeah. Come on, brother.
Let's hear it. All right. Sorry, I was late.
No, it's okay.
I was in a meeting that was very relevant to this conversation. So I thought I'd ask about it just because it's so fresh. And I love Jay, the Chief Customer Officer podcast. I sent a link around actually this morning to my whole team about the most recent 2 episodes, because both of them talk about Palantir, and our CEO's on this big Palantir FDE kick these days.
Oh boy.
And so, it's like, why are we only selling $200,000 deals? We could be selling $20 million deals. Look at Palantir. And so, but the question, we are like, the good thing about where we are is it's an AI company, and we're working with like big companies that have big budgets, et cetera. And so there is an opportunity to take us from 200,000 to, I don't know if it's 20 million, but it's significantly larger than that. Here's where an interesting thing that we're grappling with is a lot of it is workflows, right? It's like, we're going to come in and we have these, AI engineers that are going to build really cool stuff for you and understand kind of your biggest problems, and, similar to the Palantir model. And the question is, I'm curious if anybody in this group has kind of embarked on this journey of pricing and how you've thought about, and obviously you're not going to be like, well, we're going to do, it's not on a per hour basis. And it's not, I think one of the things that we've also kicked around, I know Palantir does some like success bets, well, this is the issue you care the most about, and it's going to save you $2 billion if you're successful, and we'll take some percentage of it. Well, like that issue could be 10 years from now that it gets resolved, and we may or may not have moved the needle to save you those $10 billion or done anything. But so I don't know, I'm curious like how folks, and I'll tell you how we're very quickly thinking about it, which is like the 2 models that we were kicking around is, one, we already have a per seat fee. So it's like, all right, we're going to do all this work for you. So it's going to take your per seat fee from X to X plus Y, or your per seat fee stays the same, but then we're going to like charge you an additional every year Y dollars for access to these workflows and these special things that we're building on your behalf. I don't know if anybody's kind of grappled with a similar pricing question.
Steve, I'll let you take the first crack.
There's a couple things will never claim to be an expert with. One is naming things. That's always feels like the worst job. And then pricing. So I've been fortunate to work with some like pricing experts in the past when I've run into this. Someone I'd recommend, Ryan Glushkoff, who
Mm-hmm.
does a lot of pricing stuff. Someone could probably drop his LinkedIn in the profile. But yeah, like I always go back to in the pricing conversation, there's an infinite number of ways we could potentially price it. How does that track back to what we're trying to do on the business model, right? Like, are we trying, are we trying to drive recurring revenue? Is there a services component? Is it land and expand? Like part of it's just the strategic, like what's the plan? And then that probably drives the pricing, right? But Jay and I have probably seen everything. Do you bundle the services or unbundle it? Well, depends. What are you trying to do? Well, I'm trying to drive recurring revenue. Okay, then bundle, because everything is about driving that recurring sub number as high as possible. Other people would say, no, I don't want to just do that. I want to diversify it. There was an earlier question about like success-based pricing and stuff like that. Great if you can pull it off. I feel like that's a triple, double, quadruple axle move. But if you can do
Lindy.
it, you're in a good spot, but hard to do, right?
Yeah, the reason Palantir can pull that off is because they routinely do 8-figure deals and maybe some 9-figure deals, right? It gives you a lot more room for error. And
Yeah, but I can't go buy Palantir for 1995 as well. So like they don't they're not trying to serve me as a customer.
no, exactly my point, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, Palantir is one of one. There's no other company on this planet that looks like Palantir and who they serve, highly regulated industries, military use cases, defense, right? Um, and so I think we got to really be careful, which is the topic of that podcast, David. I think we really got to be careful comparing ourselves to them, right? And right now, it's all I see: forward deployed engineers. That's all everybody is doing
Yeah.
is
And
deploying forward
it is
deployed
a very
engineers.
interesting model. Forward deployed engineers is almost to me like, can we rent Discovery? Right? If
Mm,
we just brought
yeah,
some people in, it's an approach. What's your budget? How much are we talking here? Right? Uh,
right.
it is an approach to go things. I would, I'd say, forward, can you do a forward deployed triad? Right? Imagine if I could bring in
Yeah,
my lead designer, my lead product manager, my lead engineer into what you guys are doing. I could probably build a business off that. No interest in doing that, by the way. But you totally could because there's the value. But you got to convince somebody that it's going to be infinite x, 3x, 5x better than what they're attempting to do today. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. All right, I'm gonna cut us off there because we're at time.
Yeah.
But Steve, really appreciate the conversation.
Yeah.
All of you, thank you for joining us and participating in the conversation. And um, and we'll do this again next month. We got another one coming up. We'll keep everybody posted. But I look forward to continuing the conversation. Maybe Steve on LinkedIn. This is some good stuff. So
Yeah.
we'll
Thanks
keep doing
everyone.
that.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks everybody for joining us. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Get back
All
to
right.
work. Yeah.
Thanks, y'all.
Yeah, get back to work, everybody.
Yeah.
Take care. Bye bye.